Our CBS polling has shown immigration policy to be one of the top issues for voters this election cycle. Former President Donald Trump says he plans to address it by conducting the largest mass deportation in U.S. history if he's reelected. According to the Department of Homeland Security, there are around 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the U.S. Nearly 80% of them have been in the U.S. for a decade or more. 60 Minutes sat down with Tom Homan, who led immigration enforcement during Trump's presidency, and asked what these mass deportations could look like.
How many people would be deported?
You can't answer that question.
Why not?
How many officers do I have?
Is there a written plan on this?
Not that I know of.
If there's no memo, if there's no plan, is this fully baked?
We've done it before.
CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez joins us now from Tempe, Arizona. Camilo, break down for us what we know about Trump's mass deportation plans and how he intends to carry them out.
Hi, Lindsay. As part of this reporting with 60 Minutes, we posed that question to Tom Homan, the former ICE official that you mentioned, who is likely to lead this operation if former President Donald Trump retakes the White House and returns to power. President Trump has said as much, that he will bring back Tom Homan if he is elected. And Homan told us that while there is no written memo that he has seen outlining this operation, he has said that he will likely reverse Biden administration policies, Lindsay, that currently limit who ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, can arrest in the interior of the country. Right now, ICE, under Biden administration policy, is largely only arresting immigrants who pose a threat to national security or who are serious felons and serious criminals, as well as immigrants who are crossing the U.S.-Mexico border illegally. Long-standing unauthorized immigrants who are here illegally but have otherwise not committed any serious crimes are largely not being arrested right now. But that would change under a Trump administration and under Homan's leadership if that obviously materializes. Homan also said, Lindsay, that a second Trump administration would likely resume worksite enforcement. What does that mean? Well, it means that ICE would reinstate the policy of going into workplaces to arrest undocumented workers. That practice has been discontinued by the Biden administration. Separately, top immigration advisor to President Trump, Stephen Miller, has said that the National Guard and the military would be deputized to carry out immigration enforcement to arrest and help ICE deport people, but also to use their assets, airplanes and other transportation assets, to remove people from the United States. Former President Trump has also talked about this idea of invoking a law from 1798, the Alien and Sedition Acts, to remove immigrant gang members without any due process. So all of these ideas, obviously, Lindsay, are bound to face operational, legal, and humanitarian challenges.
Well, Trump's running mate J.D. Vance has said deporting 1 million migrants a year is reasonable. You know, our 60 Minutes colleague Cecilia Vega went on that roundup with ICE for undocumented immigrants with criminal histories. She reported it took a team of more than a dozen officers 7 hours to arrest 6 people. That doesn't include the hours spent searching for them. How much would a deportation of this scale cost, and is it feasible for ICE?
Well, one study by a nonpartisan group, Lindsay, found that if the goal is to deport 1 million unauthorized immigrants per year, that would cost the U.S. government, the federal government, $88 billion in terms of finding detention facilities to detain these immigrants, deportation flights, hiring the sufficient number of agents and support staff to carry this out, because it is not as simple, Lindsay, as finding someone, arresting that person, and then just shipping them out to another country. That person usually is afforded due process and has to have their claim heard in front of a judge. That will require more immigration courts, immigration judges, and support staff. That person has to be detained during the duration of those proceedings. That will require more detention facilities. And of course, they have to be arrested to begin with. And right now, ICE has about 6,000 law enforcement agents, which is, of course, not nearly enough to arrest everyone who is here illegally. And the agency also has only about 41,000 detention beds, which again is not nearly enough to detain everyone who is here illegally in the United States, Lindsay. So this would be a massive surge in resources. that would likely have to be allocated by Congress unless the second Trump administration, if that materializes, of course, is able to divert funds from other agencies.
Camilo Montoya-Galvez, thank you.